Amelia Carter woke before dawn, her modest home in the countryside shrouded in the quiet of early morning. The walls, worn thin by years of braving winter winds, held memories of a lifetime etched into their creaking bones. Amelia wrapped her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, not against the cold but against the weight of an unshakable ache in her heart. Her son, Logan. It had been 2 years since his last visit, 2 years of unanswered letters and prayers. Amelia, once so proud of the young man who had left for the city brimming with ambition, now felt the crushing silence of his absence more acutely than the solitude of her home. She stood at the small window overlooking the fields where Logan had once played as a boy. The golden stalks of wheat waved in the early light, a bittersweet reminder of the dreams she had nurtured for him. Amelia had always excused his silence as the consequence of a busy life in the city. But as time passed, those excuses began to crumble, leaving only doubt in their place. The neighbors' questions had become unbearable. "How's Logan?" they would ask with polite smiles, their voices filled with unspoken judgment. "Will he visit you soon?" Amelia's replies were always the same, a forced smile, a soft assurance that he was busy. But beneath her calm exterior, the questions cut deep, feeding her growing anxiety like an untended fire. Amelia's hands trembled as she prepared herself for the day ahead, her best wool skirt and faded blouse chosen with care. They weren't fancy but carried memories of the few joyful occasions she had shared with Logan. Today was different. Today, she wasn't waiting anymore. If Logan wouldn't come to her, she would go to him. Gripping a small, battered suitcase, she paused at her door. The weight of her decision bore down on her chest, but she forced herself forward. The fields, bathed in soft light, seemed to bid her goodbye as she made her way to the old bus station. Her journey began not with hope but determination, the fierce, unyielding resolve of a mother seeking answers. For years, Amelia had toiled under the sun, her hands cracked and calloused to provide Logan with every opportunity she could. She would not let his silence steal away her peace without knowing why. As the bus rumbled away, carrying her from the only life she'd ever known, Amelia stared out the window, the countryside slipping further behind. She clutched the address of Logan's mansion tightly in her hands. Amelia knew she would face whatever she found in the city, not with fear, but with the unshakable love of a mother. Amelia's thoughts drifted to Logan's promises, a life of ease, a shared happiness built on his success. Those words had once filled her with pride. Now, they echoed like a distant memory, mingling with the ache in her chest. She didn't need grandeur or comfort. She only needed her son. The bus groaned to a halt, its brakes hissing like an exhausted sigh. Amelia stepped onto the bustling pavement, clutching her suitcase with trembling hands. The city seemed to roar around her, an unrelenting wave of noise and movement threatening to sweep her away. Towering buildings, their glass facades glinting in the midday sun, loomed overhead, casting long shadows over streets teeming with life. She paused, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it all. Amelia had imagined the city as a place of opportunity, but now it felt unwelcoming, its rhythm too fast for her slow, deliberate steps. Horns blared, strangers brushed past without a glance, and the air carried the sharp tang of exhaust. She tightened her grip on her suitcase, feeling small and out of place. In her hand was the crumpled note Logan had sent years ago, the ink fading but still legible. His address, an exclusive neighborhood she could hardly picture, even in her dreams, was scrawled in his familiar handwriting. Amelia hailed a taxi, her voice barely audible over the city's cacophony. As the car weaved through the streets, the scenery shifted. The chaotic downtown gave way to broad, tree-lined avenues where stately mansions stood like sentinels guarding their secrets. Amelia's heart raced as they approached Logan's home. She had seen grand houses before, but none like this. The mansion was palatial, its wrought iron gates adorned with intricate designs, and its garden a masterpiece of manicured perfection. The taxi stopped, and Amelia hesitated, her breath catching in her throat. For a moment, she considered asking the driver to turn around. But the memory of Logan's boyish grin and promises to care for her gave her the courage to step out. She paid the driver with shaky hands and approached the gate, feeling dwarfed by the opulence surrounding her. Her knock on the door was soft and hesitant, yet it echoed in the vastness of the estate. Minutes passed, each one stretching into an eternity. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing a young woman, dressed impeccably, with an air of effortless elegance. The woman looked Amelia up and down, her gaze as cold as the marble floors visible behind her. "Yes?" the woman asked, her tone curt, her words clipped. Amelia straightened her back, mustering every ounce of dignity she could. "I'm Amelia Carter, Logan's mother," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The woman's expression barely changed, except for a flicker of something, perhaps annoyance, crossing her face. "Logan isn't here," she said flatly. "He's swamped." Amelia's heart sank, but she refused to be turned away. "I've come a long way to see him," she said, her voice firm but polite. "I'll wait until he's back." The woman sighed, stepping aside reluctantly. "Fine, you can wait," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "Follow me." The contrast between the mansion's opulence and Amelia's simple life was staggering. Marble floors gleamed under ornate chandeliers, and walls were adorned with priceless art. Yet, despite its beauty, the house felt cold and lifeless, like a museum devoid of warmth. Amelia was led to a small sitting room near the entrance. The young woman introduced herself as Sophia and left her there with nothing more than a perfunctory nod. "I'll let you know if Logan returns," she said before disappearing down a long hallway. Alone in the vast room, Amelia shifted uncomfortably on the leather sofa. Her eyes scanned the space, hoping for some sign of Logan, a photograph, a personal belonging. But there was nothing. The walls were impersonal, and the decor was immaculate but devoid of character. It was as if Logan's presence had been erased from the home entirely. Minutes turned into hours, and still, no sign of Logan existed. The silence in the mansion was oppressive, broken only by the occasional muffled footsteps of the staff, who moved like shadows, avoiding her gaze. Amelia's unease grew with each passing moment. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Finally, Sophia returned, her expression as indifferent as before. She carried a tray with a cup of tea, which she placed on the low table in front of Amelia. "Here," she said tersely. "Thank you," Amelia murmured, though her stomach churned too much to drink. "When do you think Logan will be back?" Sophia crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. "Logan travels a lot. He might not come home for days." Amelia frowned, her maternal instincts flaring. "Why hasn't he called me? Or written? I'm his mother. Surely, he would have told me if he'd been away this long." Sophia shrugged. "Logan is a busy man. He now has bigger responsibilities than just keeping in touch with." Her voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. "More enormous than you." Amelia felt her cheeks flush with both embarrassment and anger. She had raised Logan with her two hands and worked tirelessly to give him a future, but now she was being treated like an inconvenience. But she held her tongue. She hadn't come all this way to argue with his wife. The hours dragged on, and the growing shadows outside mirrored the heaviness in Amelia's heart. The tea sat untouched, its warmth long gone. The staff moved about silently, their eyes averted as if they were part of the mansion's many secrets. Eventually, Alfred, the butler, appeared. An older man with kind but cautious eyes, he addressed Amelia with a quiet formality. "Mrs. Carter, it's getting late. Would you like me to show you a room where you can rest?" Amelia hesitated, torn between her need for answers and the exhaustion weighing on her. She nodded reluctantly, following Alfred through the labyrinthine hallways to a modest guest room far from the mansion's main living areas. Before leaving, Amelia turned to Alfred, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you know when Logan will be back?" The butler hesitated, his expression tightening. "It's complicated," he said finally. "He's swamped." Amelia's heart clenched at the vague response. Something in Alfred's tone suggested more to the story, but before she could press further, he bowed slightly and left, closing the door behind him. That night, Amelia lay on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ornate ceiling. The mansion was silent, but her thoughts were loud. What had happened to Logan? Why did his home feel like a stranger's house? And why did Sophia's cold demeanor fill her with such unease? Amelia's resolve hardened. She wouldn't leave this mansion until she found the truth about her son, no matter what secrets lay hidden behind its walls. Amelia awoke to the first rays of sunlight slipping through the heavy curtains of her guest room. Despite the elegant surroundings, she felt no comfort. The unease that had taken root in her heart the previous day had grown overnight. Something was wrong, and her mother's instincts told her that Logan's absence wasn't just a matter of being busy. She dressed quickly, choosing the modest clothes she had worn on her journey, and left her room. The mansion's hallways were eerily quiet, as though the house itself conspired to keep its secrets hidden. Amelia approached the dining room, hoping to find Sophia, and demanded clear answers about her son. The dining room was grand. Its long mahogany table could seat 20 people, but it was empty, save for a few servants silently setting an extravagant breakfast. Amelia hesitated, then sat at the table's edge, feeling dwarfed by the grandeur around her. Minutes turned to an hour, but Sophia had yet to appear. Amelia picked at the food laid before her, her appetite crushed by the weight of her thoughts. She glanced at the staff, hoping for a friendly face or even a fleeting glance of understanding, but they moved like ghosts, avoiding her entirely. Determined, Amelia decided she wouldn't sit idle any longer. She rose from the table and wandered the mansion's endless hallways. The more she explored, the stronger her unease grew. Many doors were locked, their heavy wooden frames standing as barriers to whatever secrets lay behind them. A servant would appear each time she lingered near one, offering a feeble excuse to steer her away. In one secluded hallway near the servant quarters, she found Alfred, the butler, polishing an antique table. His movements were slow and deliberate, but when he noticed her, he froze, his expression betraying a flicker of concern. "Mrs. Carter," he said, bowing slightly, "is there something I can assist you with?" Amelia stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "I need to know where my son is, Alfred, and I need the truth, not more excuses." Alfred hesitated, his eyes darting around the hallway to ensure they were alone. Finally, he sighed and leaned in closer. "Mrs. Carter, I must be careful with what I say, but your son is in the mansion." Amelia's breath caught. "What do you mean he's here? Why haven't I seen him?" "He had an accident," Alfred said, his voice barely above a whisper. "A very serious one. Since then, Mrs. Sophia has confined him to a room in the farthest wing of the house. No one is allowed to see him except for a nurse she hired and a select few staff members." Amelia felt as though the floor had been pulled out from under her. Logan was here, suffering, and no one had told her. Her hands trembled as she grasped Alfred's arm. "What kind of accident? Why would Sophia hide him from me?" Alfred looked away, his face etched with guilt. "There are rumors among the staff, Mrs. Carter. Some say it wasn't an accident at all, but I cannot say more here. Please be cautious. Sophia isn't what she seems." Before Amelia could press him further, a sound from the hallway startled them both. Sophia appeared, her cold gaze locking onto them. She smiled, but it was tight and insincere. "Everything all right here?" she asked, her tone sharp. Alfred straightened, his professional demeanor returning instantly. "Yes, ma'am. I was just assisting Mrs. Carter." Sophia's smile didn't waver, but her eyes bore into Amelia with a silent warning. "Good. Let's make sure our guest is comfortable, shall we?" Amelia nodded, masking her growing anger with a polite smile. She knew she had to tread carefully, but the fire inside her burned brighter than ever. Logan was here, and she wouldn't leave until she saw him. That evening, as the mansion fell into its usual heavy silence, Amelia sat in her room, her mind racing. Alfred's words echoed in her ears. Sophia isn't what she seems. If Logan was in the house, confined and hidden, she needed to act quickly. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at her door. When she opened it, Alfred stood there, his face tense but determined. "Mrs. Carter," he whispered, "there's someone you need to meet." He led her through the dimly lit hallways to a discreet door near the servant quarters. He knocked gently, and a young woman with tired eyes and a kind face opened it. "Mrs. Carter, this is Olivia, the nurse caring for Logan," Alfred said. Olivia's eyes softened as she looked at Amelia. "You're Logan's mother," she said quietly, as though she had been expecting her. Amelia stepped into the small room, her heart pounding. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to know the truth. What's happened to my son?" Olivia hesitated, glancing at Alfred before speaking. "Logan is gravely ill, Mrs. Carter. He's been bedridden for months. But it's not just because of his accident." Amelia frowned. "What do you mean?" The nurse's voice dropped to a whisper. "I believe he's being poisoned. The symptoms he's displaying, weakness, vomiting, loss of mobility, don't match the injuries Sophia claims he suffered. And every time he shows signs of improvement, he suddenly gets worse, always after Sophia visits him." Amelia's knees nearly gave out as the weight of Olivia's words sank in. "Poisoned," she whispered, her voice cracking. "How could anyone do such a thing?" Olivia's face hardened. "Sophia controls everything. His medications, care, even the doctors. And since Logan's condition worsened, she's fully controlled his business. Her brother, Ethan, is involved too. They're draining his accounts, seizing his assets. If Logan dies, Sophia inherits everything." Amelia's chest tightened with rage and fear. "We have to do something. We can't let her continue to hurt him." Olivia nodded. "I've been collecting samples of his medications. I believe they're tampered with. If we can get them analyzed, we'll have proof. But it's risky. If Sophia finds out, she won't hesitate to silence us." Amelia's resolve hardened. "Do whatever it takes. I'll do anything to save my son." As Olivia began to outline her plan, Alfred stepped forward. "I'll help too," he said. "Sophia and Ethan may control this house, but they don't control everyone in it. Together, we can protect Logan." The three formed a quiet alliance, each taking on a role in the dangerous mission to save Logan. Amelia felt a flicker of hope amid the fear. She wasn't alone in this fight. That night, as she lay in her bed, the mansion's oppressive silence seemed to press down on her. But this time, she didn't feel powerless. Her love for Logan was her strength, and she vowed to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The battle had only just begun. Amelia woke before dawn, her heart pounding with fear and determination. Today, she would take the first real step towards saving Logan. Every fiber of her being screamed that time was running out. If Olivia's suspicions about poisoning were true, each passing day pushed Logan closer to the brink. Olivia met her in the quiet corner of the kitchen, where staff rarely ventured at that hour. The young nurse had a small bag clutched in her hands, carefully wrapped in layers of cloth. "These are the medication samples I've been collecting," Olivia whispered, her voice tight with urgency. "If we can get these to a trusted doctor for analysis, we'll have proof. But we have to be cautious. Sophia has eyes everywhere." Amelia nodded, her grip tightening on the bag like a lifeline. "I'll take care of it," she promised, her voice trembling with emotion. Alfred entered the room moments later, his expression grave. "Sophia is leaving this morning for a meeting in the city," he said. "Ethan will be with her. This is our window. Once they're gone, the house will be quieter. We can move more freely. Do we know when they'll be back?" Amelia asked, her heart hammering. "Likely not until the evening," Alfred replied. "But we can't take any chances. They may leave spies behind." Amelia, Alfred, and Olivia worked quickly with the mansion temporarily under less scrutiny. Alfred handed Amelia a minor key. "This will open Sophia's office," he said. "I don't know what you'll find, but if there's anything incriminating about her involvement with Logan's condition or finances, it will be there." Amelia hesitated, the weight of the key heavy in her hand. "What about Ethan?" she asked. "Does he keep any records?" Alfred nodded. "His office is next to Sophia's. It's a chaotic mess, but if anything links him to the financial schemes Olivia mentioned, it'll be in there." As the morning light crept into the mansion's halls, Amelia set out for Sophia's office, her heart pounding with every step. She moved quickly but quietly, the sound of her soft-soled shoes barely audible on the polished floors. The key turned in the lock with a faint click, and the door creaked open to reveal a room mirrored Sophia's cold, calculating, and meticulously organized personality. Amelia approached the desk, her hands trembling as she rifled through the papers stacked neatly on its surface. At first, the documents seemed ordinary, business contracts, correspondence with lawyers, but a locked drawer caught her eye. Using a letter opener from the desk, she pried it open, revealing a thick file marked with Sophia's name. Amelia's breath hitched as she flipped through its contents. Letters and legal documents painted a damning picture of Sophia's past. She had been married twice before Logan, both times to wealthy men who had died under mysterious circumstances. In each case, Sophia had inherited their fortunes. The pattern was clear, and Amelia's stomach churned. Logan wasn't just Sophia's husband. He was her next victim. Her hands shook as she placed the file in her bag. There was more work to do. She moved to Ethan's office, the disarray of papers and clutter starkly contrasting Sophia's cold precision. Amelia sifted through stacks of folders and bank statements, her eyes scanning for anything unusual. What she found made her blood run cold. Financial records showed large sums of money being funneled from Logan's accounts to untraceable offshore holdings. Recent contracts bore Logan's signature, but Amelia knew he was too ill to have signed them. They had been forged. With photos of the documents saved to her phone and copies stashed in her bag, Amelia left the offices, her heart racing. She had the needed evidence, but she knew it wasn't enough. The poisoning required to be proven. Later that evening, Alfred confirmed that Sophia and Ethan were still away. Amelia and Olivia met in the nurses' quarters to finalize their plan. The samples Olivia had collected were carefully packaged and handed off to a trusted doctor Olivia had contacted earlier. "It will take a few days for the analysis," Olivia said, her voice edged with exhaustion. "But if the results confirm poisoning, we'll have undeniable proof." Amelia nodded, her face resolute. "And the financial documents? We'll need to present those alongside the poisoning evidence," Alfred interjected. "It will paint a clear picture of their scheme. But Sophia is shrewd. She'll fight back hard. We need to be ready." As they spoke, a commotion erupted near the mansion's entrance. Alfred hurried to investigate, leaving Amelia and Olivia on edge. Minutes later, he returned, his face pale. "Sophia and Ethan are back," he whispered. "And they're furious. They've discovered the offices were tampered with." Amelia's breath caught. "Do they know it was us?" "Not yet," Alfred replied. "But they're suspicious. We need to be careful from now on. They won't hesitate to retaliate if they discover what we've uncovered." The tension in the mansion was suffocating. Amelia retreated to her room, her thoughts racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that Sophia was already planning her next move. The house fell into uneasy. That night, Amelia sat by the window, staring at the sprawling garden. A new thought entered her. Logan wasn't safe here, not even for another day. She rose, her hands trembling but her resolve unshaken. She would speak to Olivia and Alfred in the morning. It was time to get Logan out of the mansion, no matter the cost. The first light of dawn found Amelia pacing her room, her mind filled with the plan forming in her heart. Logan had suffered enough. It was time to act. Amelia woke early, her heart heavy with urgency. The mansion was suffocating, its secrets weighing down every corner. She knew that Logan couldn't stay there any longer. His life depended on swift action. She sought out Alfred and Olivia, who were already in the kitchen, their faces marked by exhaustion but also resolve. "They're watching everyone now," Alfred began in a low voice, glancing around to ensure no one else was listening. "Sophia and Ethan are on edge. If we're going to get Logan out, it has to be today." Amelia nodded, her jaw tightening with determination. "We have to act fast. What's the plan?" Alfred leaned in closer, his tone grave. "Sophia and Ethan have business meetings this afternoon. They'll leave for a few hours. I've arranged for the security system to go offline temporarily, but it won't last long. Olivia and I will help move Logan to the back entrance. I've already hired a trusted driver with a medical van. Once Logan leaves the house, the driver will take him to a private clinic Olivia has secured." Amelia's heart pounded. The plan was risky, but it was their only chance. "What about the staff? Will anyone try to stop us?" Alfred shook his head. "Most of the staff are too afraid of Sophia to get involved. but a few are loyal to her. We'll need to move quickly to avoid drawing attention. Olivia chimed in, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Logan is weak, but he's stable enough to be moved. I've prepared a wheelchair and everything he'll need during the journey. Once we're at the clinic, he'll be safe. Amelia felt a surge of gratitude for Olivia and Alfred. Thank you, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know how I'd do this without you. Alfred offered a small, reassuring smile. We're all in this together. The mansion's usual tension felt even heavier as the hours ticked by. Sophia and Ethan's departure was accompanied by a flurry of activity, with staff scrambling to see them off. Once the house settled into its uneasy quiet, Alfred gave the signal. Now, he whispered, leading Amelia and Olivia to Logan's room. Amelia's breath caught as she entered Logan's room. He lay motionless on the bed, his once strong frame now frail and fragile. His pale skin and sunken eyes betrayed the months of suffering he had endured. But when his gaze met hers, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. Logan, Amelia whispered, rushing to his side. She gently took his hand, her tears threatening to spill. I'm here, my son. We're getting you out of here. Logan's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, he squeezed her hand weakly, a small but unmistakable gesture of acknowledgement. Olivia moved swiftly, checking Logan's vitals and preparing him for the journey. He's stable enough to move, she confirmed, though her voice carried the weight of their urgency. Alfred appeared moments later, pushing a wheelchair into the room. Together, he and Olivia carefully lifted Logan from the bed and settled him into the chair. Logan winced at the movement, but he didn't protest. The journey through the mansion's hallways was harrowing. Every creak of the wheelchair's wheels echoed like a thunderclap, and every shadow seemed to hold the threat of discovery. Amelia's heart raced as she clutched Logan's hand, whispering soothing words to him even as her nerves frayed. Alfred led the way, his movements swift but deliberate. They avoided the main hallways, sticking to the servant corridors where they were less likely to encounter anyone. With its cold opulence, the mansion seemed more oppressive than ever, as though it were alive and trying to trap them within its walls. As they neared the back entrance, a distant voice froze them in place. Footsteps echoed faintly, drawing closer. Alfred motioned for everyone to remain silent, eyes scanning the hallway for a place to hide. A storage closet nearby provided temporary refuge. The group huddled inside, the air thick with tension. Amelia held her breath, her heart pounding as the footsteps grew louder, then receded into silence. Finally, Alfred peeked out and nodded. The coast is clear. Let's go. They emerged cautiously and resumed their trek to the back exit. When they reached the door, the sight of the medical van waiting just beyond the gates relieved Amelia. The driver, a kind-faced man in his 40s, quickly approached. Let's get him loaded up, he said, his voice steady but urgent. Olivia and Alfred helped lift Logan onto the stretcher, securing him carefully before placing him in the van. Amelia climbed in beside him, her hand never leaving his. Olivia joined them while Alfred stayed behind to cover their tracks. As the van pulled away, Amelia allowed herself a moment to exhale. The mansion grew smaller in the distance, its dark aura fading with every mile they traveled. But she knew the fight was far from over. The private clinic was a stark contrast to the cold grandeur of the mansion. Small and unassuming, it exuded a warmth that immediately put Amelia at ease. A team of doctors and nurses met them at the entrance, whisking Logan into a treatment room. Amelia stood in the hallway, her legs trembling beneath her. Olivia placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He's in good hands now, she said softly. Hours passed as the medical team worked to stabilize Logan. Finally, a doctor emerged, his expression calm but serious. Mrs. Carter, he began, your son is stable for now. His condition is critical, but we believe he can recover with time and proper care. We'll do everything we can to help him regain his strength. Amelia felt tears welling up as she nodded. Thank you, she whispered. Olivia pulled her aside. We still have the medication samples, she reminded her. Once the analysis is complete, we'll have the proof to take to the authorities. But we need to stay vigilant. Sophia won't take this lightly. Amelia squared her shoulders, her resolve unshaken. Let her come, she said, her voice steady. We'll be ready. As night fell over the clinic, Amelia sat by Logan's bedside, holding his hand. He was safe, for now. But the battle against Sophia and Ethan was just beginning. The evidence they had collected was their weapon, and Amelia vowed to wield it with the same fierce love that had driven her to protect her son. The darkness was lifting, and she would stop at nothing to bring Logan back to the light. The following day, Amelia stood by Logan's bedside, her hand gently brushing his hair. His breathing was steady, though his frailty still broke her heart. The steady rhythm of the monitors offered a fragile reassurance. She couldn't let her guard down. Not yet. Olivia entered the room with a folder in hand, her face a mix of exhaustion and determination. The tests are complete, she said, trembling slightly. The results confirm it. Logan was being poisoned. The dosage increased progressively over the past several months. There's no question this was deliberate. Amelia's chest tightened, the confirmation bringing a bitter mix of relief and rage. What do we do now? She asked, her voice firm despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. Olivia placed the folder on the bedside table. I've contacted the trusted lawyer we spoke about. He's ready to present this evidence to the authorities. We also have the financial documents you collected. Together, this is more than enough to expose Sophia and Ethan. Alfred arrived shortly after, carrying additional files he had retrieved from the mansion. This includes the forged contracts, he said, his voice low. It proves that Sophia and Ethan were trying to take control of Logan's businesses. Once this reaches the authorities, they'll have no way to escape. Amelia clenched her fists, her determination hardening. They've taken so much from Logan. His health, his legacy. It's time we take everything back. The lawyer met them at the clinic later that afternoon. A sharp-eyed man in his 60s, he radiated confidence and a quiet fury as he reviewed the evidence. This is damning, he said, flipping through the documents. Not only will it bring them to justice, but it will also clear Logan's name and restore his reputation. The plan was set in motion. The lawyer would file a formal complaint with the authorities, presenting the medical and financial evidence. Olivia would provide her testimony as Logan's nurse, and Alfred would corroborate her claims as a longtime staff member of the household. But as they prepared to move forward, a call interrupted their meeting. The lawyer's phone buzzed insistently, and his expression darkened as he listened. When he ended the call, he looked grimly at Amelia. Sophia and Ethan have filed a countercomplaint, he said. They're claiming that you kidnapped Logan, Amelia, and that this is all a scheme to take control of his assets. Amelia felt the blood drain from her face. That's absurd, she said, her voice rising. Logan is fighting for his life. How could they turn this against us? They're desperate, the lawyer replied. But it's a calculated move. They're trying to discredit you before the evidence reaches the court. Amelia's hands trembled, but she steadied herself. Let them try, she said, her voice steely. We have the truth on our side, and I won't stop until they're held accountable. The courtroom was filled with a tense energy as the case against Sophia and Ethan began. Amelia sat beside the lawyer, her heart pounding as the proceedings unfolded. Across the room, Sophia exuded her usual air of cold confidence, dressed impeccably and feigning concern for Logan's well-being. This is nothing but a baseless attack by a grieving mother, Sophia said during her statement. My husband's health has been my top priority. These accusations are a desperate attempt to tarnish my reputation and gain control of his estate. Amelia's stomach churned at the lies, but she remained composed, her gaze unwavering as the lawyer presented their case. The evidence was damning. Photos of the altered medications, the results of the toxicology report, and the forged financial documents painted a chilling picture of deliberate betrayal and greed. Olivia's testimony was compelling, her voice trembling as she described Logan's symptoms and the interference she faced while trying to care for him. Alfred's testimony followed, adding weight to the case. I've worked in that household for years, he said, and I've seen how Sophia and Ethan manipulated everything, from Logan's care to business dealings. This wasn't an accident or negligence. This was a calculated effort to strip Logan of everything he had. As the evidence mounted, Sophia's composure began to crack. Her confident facade faltered, and Ethan grew visibly agitated, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. The turning point came when the judge reviewed the toxicology report. The deliberate poisoning, combined with the financial evidence, left no room for doubt. The courtroom fell silent as the judge delivered the verdict. Sophia Carter and Ethan Carter are hereby found guilty of attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy to seize control of Logan Carter's estate. They are sentenced to the maximum penalty allowed by law. Amelia's breath caught as relief washed over her. Tears streamed down her face as she turned to Olivia and Alfred, their expressions a mix of triumph and exhaustion. Justice had prevailed. As Sophia and Ethan were led away in handcuffs, their carefully constructed empire crumbled behind them. The weight of their greed and betrayal had finally caught up with them. Logan's health continued to improve in the days following the trial. Though the road to recovery was long, the removal of Sophia and Ethan's toxic presence gave him the peace he needed to heal. Amelia sat by his bedside, her hand in his, as they watched the sunset through the clinic window. "It's over," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "You're safe now, Logan." He turned to her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Because of you, Mom," he whispered. "You never gave up on me." Amelia smiled, her heart swelling with pride and relief. "A mother's love doesn't stop, Logan. It doesn't give up, no matter what." The battle was over, but the bond between mother and son had only grown stronger. Together, they looked forward to a future free from the shadows of betrayal, ready to rebuild the almost stolen life. The days following the trial brought a calmness Amelia hadn't felt in years. Logan's strength began to return slowly but surely. Though his physical recovery was a challenge, it was his emotional healing that required the most care. The betrayal he had suffered at the hands of Sophia and Ethan had left deep scars, but surrounded by love and support, he began to find his way back. Amelia decided to move Logan out of the clinic and into a quiet cottage near her home in the countryside. The cottage was small but warm, its simplicity a welcome contrast to the cold opulence of the mansion. The rolling hills and golden fields offered Logan a peaceful place to recover. Each morning, Amelia helped him outside, where he could sit beneath the shade of a tree and watch the world come alive. Birds chirped, a soft breeze carried the scent of wildflowers, and for the first time in months, Logan began to smile again. One afternoon, as they sat together under the vast sky, Logan broke the silence. "Mom," he began, his voice steadier than in weeks, "I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself." Amelia reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "A mother doesn't need thanks, Logan," she said, her voice warmed. "Seeing you here, alive and healing, is all I could ever ask for." Logan nodded, his eyes glistening with emotion. "I've been thinking a lot about what comes next," he continued, "about how I want to use the second chance you've given me." Amelia tilted her head, listening intently. "I want to rebuild what was lost. Not just my business, but something bigger," Logan said. "I want to start a foundation that helps others who've been betrayed, manipulated, or silenced. People like me." Amelia's heart swelled with pride. "That's a beautiful idea, Logan," she said. "Your pain wasn't for nothing if it can help others." Over the following weeks, Logan worked closely with lawyers and advisors to reestablish his businesses and begin laying the groundwork for the foundation. He named it the Phoenix Trust, a symbol of rising from the ashes of adversity. Months later, Logan stood before a crowd at the grand opening of the Phoenix Trust headquarters. Though his body still bore the traces of his ordeal, his spirit was stronger than ever. Amelia sat in the front row, her heart brimming with pride as Logan spoke. "This foundation isn't just about rebuilding lives," he said, his voice firm and steady. "It's about reminding people that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way forward. There's always hope." The crowd erupted into applause, but Logan's eyes found Amelia's. He smiled, a private moment of gratitude passing between them. After the ceremony, Logan and Amelia returned to the cottage. The sun was setting, casting the fields in hues of gold and amber. They sat together on the porch, the air filled with the gentle hum of crickets. "Mom," Logan said softly, "I owe everything to you. You gave me the strength to fight, to believe in something better." Amelia smiled, her hand resting on his. "You've always had that strength, Logan. I just reminded you it was there." As the sky darkened and the stars began to emerge, they sat in comfortable silence, mother and son bound by a love that had weathered every storm. The journey had been long and filled with pain, but they had emerged stronger, ready to embrace the future. And though the road ahead was uncertain, they knew they would face it together, their bond unshakable. For Amelia, the fields of her home were no longer just a symbol of the past. They were a symbol of resilience, of growth, and of the unyielding power of love. For Logan, they were a reminder of where he came from, a foundation upon which he would build his life and a legacy of hope and strength for others. The darkness that had once overshadowed them was replaced by the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Together, they faced the horizon, ready to begin again. The story ends with Amelia and Logan finding peace and knowing that their journey is a testament to the enduring strength of family and the triumph of justice. A tale of love, resilience, and new beginnings. It serves as a reminder that no matter how deep the shadows, the light always returns.